Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. The last 48 hours, it's hard to keep up sometimes with the freak outs of the left and the things that they freak out over. And just their reaction to the Trump video meme. They're having entire interview segments on some of these networks about Trump posting that AI video of him flying a fighter jet, dropping sewage on the protesters, and from over the weekend, the No King protesters. And just listening to these people continue to isolate themselves from normal people. I mean, no normal people can listen to the way that they talk about this stuff and think that they're anything other than insane. I mean, it is so, and then you couple that with the way they're reacting about the addition of this ballroom to the White House. When you stand back and look at it, you just want to say to these people, just forgive my language, but can you not bitch about everything? Like, it is non-stop. And about things that are so non-controversial, or should be. One of the upsides, I suppose, is it does give us an opportunity to learn just a little bit of history that otherwise we may not have. The East Wing that the left is... they're acting as if the founders of the nation built that on their own. Before Philadelphia was the place of gathering for the leaders of this nation, and you know that the way that they're behaving, it's like George Washington himself had made his way over to D.C. and had taken a golden shovel and knew eventually a White House would be there, and got started with the East Wing. That East Wing, the development of it, didn't even start until after 1900. I thought, well, we'll go into a little bit of history of it, but this pearl clutching, and then the visuals, the construction. Right now, they're doing some demolition in order to add that ballroom, so that no longer would whomever the president is hosting any sort of event, they don't have to set tents up any longer. That's the way it's long been done. They just set up giant tents. And Trump is positioned on this. This is ridiculous. Just logistically speaking, when you have these massive events that are occurring, whether it's just a domestic event or an event that involves world leaders, and there's no room to accommodate them in the White House, so they have to set up a tent. Well, when it's raining and it's windy outside, it gets muddy. It's just silliness, and it's one of those things that has not been taken care of because it's just not been a priority for a lot of presidents. And Trump sees this as something that fixes long-term a problem that has been around for some time. And this is a part of the White House that's not part of the original White House at all. There has been massive reconstruction done. In fact, this is arguably the area of the White House in which this is where, if you want to do these things, this is where you would do these things. But you listen to them and you would think that the founders themselves drew up the plans for the East Wing, and that the one thing that was more important to them than anything else in this entire world was that East Wing stays in its original form as they had designed it. And for a political party, that being the Democrats, who love to tear down statues, who love to remove the names of the founders from everything under the sun because they were just a bunch of white privileged slave owners that were, wanting to build this country on the back of slaves. It's odd that suddenly they find a great reverence for the founders, which again had no connection to the East Wing anyhow. So we'll get just a little bit of history on that. Then update you on just this AI video stuff and the ignorant statements that come out of the mouths of these people. Got a number of I don't know, off the beaten path things to talk about. Sylvester Stallone's wife, it's going to be interesting. She made comments recently on a podcast regarding why it is that there's a disproportionately high number of transgender kids amongst the Hollywood elites that will, she is going to suffer the onslaught of the hatred of the left within the next 24 hours because of the comments that are making the rounds. Also, Jon Stewart, there's an exchange he had with Bernie Sanders, and it's a great snapshot of how people on the left, even when they start to get on the right track, how people like Bernie Sanders use the left-wing Jedi mind trick on them in order to get them back into the cult. And I want to share some of that with you as well. Oh, and then today we have Steve-O on.
We've got just a well-rounded show.
Steve-O, which, depending on your era of growing up, may mean a lot to you, may mean nothing to you, but he is synonymous with Jackass, the television series, and then the movies that would come out subsequent to that. And he is doing a tour of shows, one of which is going to be in Springfield, and so we're going to talk with him around 8:30 this morning about what that show looks like, and then I'm just curious about a number of things as well. One of the things I am curious about today, if something like Jackass were to hit its peak today or become big today, it would clearly be because of individuals putting their crazy antics on social media. And then someone would see that, some production company, and say, oh, hey, we need to pair with those people because we see something big here. But I don't know if I'd say the peak, but even prior to the peak, their whole evolution occurred well before social media was a thing. And so I'm curious how it went from whatever it was they were doing, just, a bunch of guys making videos of themselves doing insanely ridiculous and oftentimes dangerous things, how that got the traction to end up on, television, to have its own television show, given that there was no social media for them to self-promote. So that's something I'm curious about. And you can, if you have any questions you want me to ask them, I don't know that I'll be able to get them all in. You can go ahead and text those in. And again, it'll be around 8:30 this morning. We're expected to have him on. And if you miss it, don't worry, of course, we'll have it in podcast form for you after the show. That text line, of course, the Pyramid Roofing Company, text line 447 KSGF. Now the latest news.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight, clear with a low around 44. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Friday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers with a high near 58.
it is it's so cartoonish watching and listening to the left act as if it is just incredibly uncouth and just shocking that Trump would post an AI video of him flying a jet while wearing a crown over these No Kings protesters and then dumping sewage over them. It's just funny. But the narrative, I suppose, that they're working with here is that is just bringing public discourse to a new low. This is all in the context of Trump supporters that anti-Trump people that call Trump supporters Nazis. Call for his assassination, celebrate the assassination and killing of Trump supporters. And then they act as if the political conversation in this country all of a sudden has just gone down the toilet because of what Donald Trump... Like, who do you think you're fooling? I think that they're even fooling themselves. Barack Obama called Americans that did not support him bitter clingers, saying that, people in the middle of the country, they just bitterly cling to God and their guns. Hillary Clinton, of course. Unredeemable basket of deplorables. Joe Biden, semi-fascist and trash, or garbage, whichever of the two. He referred to Americans that supported Donald Trump. And, of course, the Nazis and so forth that get thrown in there. And those people's sensibilities are ruffled because Donald Trump made a video dropping... that's just so awful. We just can't believe our virgin eyes. You people are nuts. This is why people don't like you. I think we just need to be straight up about it. This is why you are unlikable. And I think that one of the aspects of people leaving the Democrat Party that gets overlooked is just who wants to be part of that. We recognize a number of reasons that people have left the Democrat Party, and we actually saw it in terms of registration after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And we can look at the different issues, and we talk about that here. But and the areas in which people have felt that in meaningful ways they've been abandoned by the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party's taken advantage of them. They haven't been listening to them. It depends oftentimes on the demographic of voter that we speak of. But I think something that gets overlooked is that people that may not necessarily be overly political, and they don't even really focus on the issues unless it's something that just really is impacting them at the time. But I suspect there's a segment of the population that's turned off by the Democrat Party just because they're not likable any longer. This is something that's been somewhat noticeable with candidates. Hillary Clinton clearly was not likable. Joe Biden, at one point, that was sort of his selling point. He was a likable guy, but when he began to become deranged and the dementia thing, and that just sort of went away. Kamala Harris, not likable. And increasingly, you have these Democrat candidates that are just not very likable people. But you look at the movement itself and the people involved in the movement and these protesters that scream and yell and just act weird. just as a political party, you have become not likable. You have become and I would listen. Okay, so I'm biased, but I can't imagine an average person who, again, isn't someone that listens to talk radio or gets online every day to see what's going on. They're, in the world of politics, their social media feeds are just all animals and family because they have no interest in the political stuff. But in the casual observance of the discourse that's going on, you turn on Jimmy Kimmel. Now, of course, he's liked by people who hate other people. People who hate Donald Trump, people who hate Trump supporters, they like Jimmy Kimmel. They like Seth Meyers. They like Stephen Colbert. But average people, the mockery and the pearl clutching and just the nonstop griping about even the most benign things, there are certain areas that I see that they could understand and be like, well, I see why some people don't like it. But like the AI videos and it's the lack of ability to have an appropriate response. It's one thing to say that video's stupid, but this whole presentation, I mean, Jeff Daniels, it was on MSNBC's Deadline. And these people act as if it's the single worst offense that a president has ever committed ever. And that's where people are like, you are not likable. You're very off-putting. The nonstop, the Debbie Downer, the world is coming to an end. Every single issue is the single worst issue ever to face mankind as long as Donald Trump's involved in it. And it just makes people not like you. You take the politics out of it, and any organization, let's say you joined a quilting organization and you started attending, and everything everyone did was just complain and gripe, and everything that popped up was the single worst thing ever to happen, and we need to hold protests for it. It would not take a normal person long to be like, these people are just negative. I leave feeling worse than when I arrived. And for all of the reasons I believe it is noteworthy to recognize and evaluate why average normal people are leaving the Democrat Party. Doesn't mean they're necessarily going Republican, but they're leaving the Democrat Party. I do believe what does get overlooked is just that overall icky feeling of you make me feel bad. You make me feel bad about the country. You make me feel bad about getting up in the morning. You make me feel like, tomorrow is going to be everything's the end of everything. The end of the planet when you talk about the environment. The end of democracy as we know it if the election doesn't go our way. The end of, it's just everything is the end of the world. Well, for Pete's sakes, who wants to be around that? It's just exhausting. I've got to take a break and I want to just briefly touch on some of what Jeff Daniels is saying, and he's just one of many people on the left that have weighed in on this. But it is a demonstration. So much of what they say is, again, they have no idea what they're talking about, even historically. And that will segue into, it's the same thing when it comes to the addition of a ballroom on the White House. The place that many of these people portray themselves as from where they're coming, like historical, like, the history, oh my gosh, it's awful, is a demonstration they have no clue what they're talking about. Zero. And honestly, I didn't even know. I thought, I'm going to look up the history of the East Wing, because I didn't have a deep knowledge of this part of the White House. But the difference between people like you and I is we don't go off on a just this crazy path about something that we don't know about. See, we want to learn about it. The left does not behave that way, and this whole ballroom East Wing thing is an example of that. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. All right, we're going to take 90 seconds after the traffic here. I've noticed the count, incidentally, of the No Kings protester has gone up. Jeff Daniels on MSNBC's Deadline, yes, the actor, and he said, quote, I think the No Kings protest, aside from the 8 million plus people that actually brought attention to what's going on. So it's gone from 7 million to 8 million, 8 million plus. Before you know it, we will all have been there. And there's a great question that's been asked. Who came up with this number, 7 million? And anytime it's cited in the source, it's the organizers. Well, I guess we should believe them, shouldn't we? Did the media, especially during Trump's term when he loved to tout numbers of crowds, did they go with his numbers? Of course not. They did everything they could to disprove those numbers, or they would cite the fact that Donald Trump, without evidence, claimed 30,000 people showed up. But the media all over the place, 7 million people, 7 million people, 7 million people, million people. Like, where did those numbers go? Well, the organizers. Oh, well, clearly they can be trusted. It's a very honest group of individuals, of course.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 44. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Friday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers with a high near 58.
I wanted to share a review that I actually shared yesterday, but it was later in the show, and so many of you that are listening now probably didn't hear it, but it was a review just from last month regarding Emily Johnson, and I just really liked this one, so I wanted to share it again. We highly recommend Emily Johnson. On our own, we found a home we wanted to purchase, which is slightly different in terms of a scenario. Later, we realized what a small piece of the buying experience finding the right house is. The seller was very emotionally attached to the house that we were trying to purchase. This person was having a really hard time with the negotiating process related to the request after the home inspection. The seller's realtor was also struggling to encourage her client to make decisions timely. This is where Emily really stepped up. She not only helped us, but she also helped advise the other realtor on how to help her client. I'm not sure the sale would have ever been finalized without Emily's assistance. She's just incredible. And, oftentimes the experience itself is relatively smooth, no bumps in the road. It's still great to have the best helping you guide through that. But where you really see the benefit and the shine and how it is that Emily Johnson is set apart from so many others is in those instances that are unique circumstances in which it might not otherwise happen. But she does make it happen. And that's just some of what she's known for. Any home buying, home selling. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I saw this earlier this morning. There was a video at one of the No Kings rallies, and there was a gal that was going around handing out water. And the person it was one of the many Trump haters that was filming these rallies, and the internet has been populated with all sorts of videos showing how nutty these people are and how hateful they are and extreme they are. And so this person wanted to post like, oh my gosh, look what I found. And it was a gal who was handing out bottles of water, and she offered the person who was filming a bottle of water, and he told her, he's like, hey, just so you know, I'm a Trump supporter. You still going to give me some? And she's like, well, yeah. She goes, water's for everybody. And she was nice and somewhat bubbly, and she was actually pretty, and it just seemed really, really weird. Like, this person does not belong in this scenario at all. She wasn't screaming and yelling. She found out that this person was a Trump supporter and acted like, hey, that's no big deal. It really made me think, why is she there? I mean, it genuinely did, because she clearly was, you can just tell people that are naturally, their baseline is anger and resentment, and she did not seem that way at all. And it was just very interesting. It genuinely made me curious. Like, who is this person? What is she doing? So Jeff Daniels on MSNBC's Deadline was talking about the No Kings thing, and he said, I would like to think that things like decency and civility and respect for the rule of law and respect for things that are bigger than you, including the office of the presidency, which is different than a monarchy, will matter. He said, by the way, do we really have to treat people like that? Now, again, this is someone who is supportive of the left, that kills political opposition, tears down Trump signs, assaults Trump supporters, calls them Nazis, everything under the sun. And so that is the irony of these people on the left that, I mean, just why can't we all be civil? I don't know. Why can't you? He went on to say, the meme that he had where he was flying with the crown and the, spewing excrement all over the people down below. Would Lincoln have done that? Now, this is the part where I find it very amusing. Because this is a statement that is coming from and or intended for people who have no concept of history. Lincoln arrested reporters for reporting stuff that he didn't like regarding the war. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. I think that there is a lot of legitimate room for discussion as to whether it was necessary during that time. Some will say it wasn't. Some will say it was necessary, that, that he did things that, listen, we were in a civil war, and it was involving people who were saying, hey, I'm not part of the United States anymore. And so an argument as to whether or not they should be afforded the benefits that were protected, or as written out in the Constitution. I think there's plenty of discussion to be had about that. But you really want to use Lincoln as an example? He would take reporters and have them captured and then put them in the belly of ships and sail them out to sea so that they couldn't be found. There was just for funsies, I thought, for the Jeff Daniels of the world, like, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, he would have never done anything so off-color as create a meme making fun of. I mean, he declared war. Executed a war. I guess Congress declares war, but every day he was trying to kill as many of the opposition as possible. This was, as commander-in-chief of the armed forces, this is, part of what he was trying to do. July 30th, 1863. Lincoln issued an executive order mandating that for every U.S. soldier killed in violation of the laws of war, a rebel soldier should be executed, or would be executed. This was his executive order. For those that think Abraham Lincoln would have never done anything so appalling as make a mean meme about opposition. His executive order read, "It is the duty of every government to give protection to its citizens, of whatever class, color, condition, especially those who are duly organized as soldiers in the public service. The law of nations and the usages and customs of war, as carried on by civilized powers, permit no distinction as to color in the treatment of prisoners of war as public enemies, to sell or enslave any captured person on account of his color, and for no offense against the law of war, is a relapse into barbarism and a crime against the civilization of the age. The government of the United States will give the same protection to all its soldiers, and if the enemy shall sell or enslave anyone because of his color, the offense shall be punished by retaliation upon the enemy's prisoners in our possession. It is thereby ordered that for every soldier of the United States killed in violation of the laws of war, a rebel soldier shall be executed. And for everyone enslaved by the enemy or sold into slavery, a rebel soldier shall be placed at hard labor on the public works and continued at such labor until the other shall be released and receive the treatment due to a prisoner of war." Now, this was largely in response to in the Confederacy whenever they would capture Union soldiers that were black. And the mistreatment of those individuals. And so Lincoln's response was, all right, well, what you do to them, we're going to do to you. We've already captured prisoners of war, we'll execute them. Now, again, because of the point in history, I think reasonable people can have reasonable debates as to whether or not this was the proper approach. But I just find it hilarious when these ignorant buffoons on the left make these declarations like Abraham Lincoln, he would have never done anything, like created a mean AI video if he had had the opportunity to, against his political oppositions. He was too presidential for that. He called for it was an executive order. Now, this, of course, is something the vast majority of people don't know, Americans don't know, and not knowing certain aspects of history isn't a sin. When it becomes a problem is when you begin spouting off about things that you have no concept of. And that's what the left constantly does. They do it all the time with history. They love to do it with Christianity. They despise Christians. They have absolutely no use for Christians. They demonize Christians as, Christian nationalism is going to take over. But boy, they love to pull out that Jesus card when they think they can use it against Christians. And in doing so, they demonstrate they have no concept of what Christianity even is. After the break, the other, the last 24 hours, 48 hours of outrage from the left over the improvements to the White House, this ballroom. And their outrage is once again a demonstration that when it comes to the White House itself and the East Wing, which is the area of the White House in which this construction is taking place, they have no clue what they're talking about. Pyramid Roofing Company text line. Nick, while I agree that people are overreacting to everything President Trump does is a little ridiculous, I do think that we should hold our elected officials to a higher standard. If we want to raise the level of respect and debate in this country, we need to have leaders who lead the way. And I think that is a perfectly reasonable discussion. Of course, my discussion on this was about the hilarity of the left, given how just there isn't a name they won't call people, there aren't steps that they won't take, but then they expect their opposition to be holier than thou. And part of the reason they do that is because it's a weapon that they can use against them. And honestly, it's a weapon that Democrats long used against Republicans because Republicans allowed them to. Now, and listen, I'm not saying that it's right that Republicans as a party have changed in order to meet the challenge. I think reasonable people can take the position that changing who you are, it sullies you up and muddies you up. But there's also the perspective when Dinesh D'Souza was in town several years ago for the Vitae Foundation event, he had talked about how this very issue and how Trump is needed in the moment. In fact, he used Lincoln as an example of sometimes in the moment, if you are going to win and beat political opposition that wants to all but destroy you, sometimes what your normal approach would be to take is not going to work, and then you lose. It is similar in fashion, I think, to almost self-defense. It's wrong to kill people. But if somebody breaks into your home and they are trying to kill you, well, the circumstances are different. And that is a time in which you've got to do it. Otherwise, you and your family may be killed. And similar to that, the argument is that Dinesh D'Souza and others have made is that the Republican Party and voters and supporters of the Republican Party spent years being called racist, being called homophobic, being called science deniers, saying that they hate the poor. And because there really wasn't any sort of real response to it, and Republican voters were just told, hey, that's the way it is. We're going to be above the fray. We're not going to get down into the mud and mudsling and name call like they do. Increasingly, those stereotypes kept. Those stereotypes really stuck with people, and people believed it that didn't know any better. And I think that it's fair to say, because Trump said no, we're not going to be handicapped by this self-imposed restriction any longer. We are going to fight back. And we are going to, at times, do it in a fun, goofy way that shows that, hey, we can laugh at ourselves, we can laugh at the opposition. But it has, I would say, for the first time, really broken those stereotypes, or at least put cracks in those stereotypes to where people are beginning to recognize, particularly in the black community, hey, wait a minute. Maybe the Democrat Party isn't the great savior. Maybe Republicans aren't racist. When it comes to which party is the party of the elite rich versus the working man, clearly that has changed. And that's another area where Republicans were forced to they hate the poor, they hate the working man. Oh, Republicans are for the rich. And because there wasn't really any meaningful fight back on it, that stuck. Well, look how much that's turned around. Now, some could argue that all of that still could have been turned around without the unpleasant presentation that sometimes Trump puts forward. But boy, that's, I think, a pretty hard argument to make. Now, is it worth it? Reasonable people can debate on that. I think reasonable people can say, even if it means losing, as long as you aren't allowing people to change who you are, it's better to stay true to yourself and to be dignified and to lose than it is to win by being undignified. I think those are deep philosophical conversations that intelligent people can have. Now, to, I suppose, further the point, that is what you find the real problem that's lacking on the left, is their complete inability and unwillingness to even have those sorts of discussions. All right, got to get traffic, and then I just want to hit you with some, I think it's interesting information regarding the East Wing of the White House that I did not know. The left portraying what Trump is doing in terms of the addition of the ballroom as something that would have the founders rolling over in their grave because this is historic and so forth, are either, I suspect most of them don't even know the history of the East Wing, and the fact that up until, just even right until after 1900, that East Wing didn't even exist. This is not something that is historically part of the original White House. It's not, and it's something that's been altered numerous times. So this isn't anything new other than it's a needed improvement, and I'll just, fill you in on a little bit of history, and it can be useful for you because I'm sure that you may have some friends that will, spout off these sort of insults and clutch their pearls based off of complete disinformation, and this gives you a chance to inform and educate them. Ozarks elder law, 5 ways to pay for nursing homes. People think that either magically it's just paid for, like Medicaid takes care of that, right? Or, well, we got the family farm, we're going to have to sell it off. That's what it's there for. There are 5 different ways in Missouri you can pay for nursing homes. Now, unfortunately, what occurs is every minute that ticks by is a minute closer to one of those options falling away until you eventually end up with one or maybe none. And too often times people just, they're told, well, you're too, quote, rich. Yeah, you may not have a lot in the bank, but you got 120 acres here, and you got that paid-off farm, and it's got a barn unit, and it's got all this, and so you can't be covered. Well, sometimes you can, but you got to do it early. You got to plan ahead, and this is where Ozarks Elder Law can come in to make sure you are taken care of. But the earlier out, the further out, the more options that are going to be available to you. And by the way, it varies from state to state. And especially if you live on the border of either Arkansas or Kansas or Oklahoma, Lori Rook talked to us about this, that she was working with a family. They have an office in Joplin that found just, Joplin borders up against a couple of other states there, Oklahoma and you got Kansas. And just by moving across the border in terms of the family member into a nursing home, they were able to have it paid for, whereas otherwise they weren't able to. So these are all things you need her and her team in your corner. So when it comes to that pre-planning nursing home, even if it's 40 years down the road, ozarkselderlaw.com, 10 area locations, a consultation is free. All right, so the left is going on and on about the White House, and that there was a posting from, some of this stuff is just hilarious. Senator Andy Kim, a Democrat, posted a photo of himself with his family at the White House, adding, quote, "I wanted to share this photo of my family standing by a historic part of the White House that was just torn down today by Trump. We didn't need a billionaire-funded ballroom to celebrate America. Disgusting what Trump is doing." And, of course, others similar fashion. Now, Trump, his announcement was, "I'm pleased to announce the ground has been broken on the White House grounds to build the new big, beautiful White House ballroom, completely separate from the White House itself. The East Wing is being fully modernized as part of the process, will be more beautiful than ever when it's complete. For more than 150 years, every president has dreamt about having a ballroom at the White House to accommodate people for grand parties, state visits, etc. I'm honored to be the first president to finally get this much-needed project underway with zero cost to the American taxpayer. The White House ballroom is being privately funded by many generous patriots, great American companies, and yours truly. The ballroom will be happily used for generations to come." Now, this East Wing area was not, and it was 1902 before it even began, and it was a tiny, tiny little just entrance for visitors to the White House by Theodore Roosevelt, and it was a coat room. That was it. And then in 1942, you had Truman. He had like a balcony, and there was construction of an underground bunker in that area of the grounds known as the Presidential Emergency Operations Center. And part of the addition of the East Wing was to pretty much be cover over that. And it's changed over time. The Roosevelt Coat Room became the White House Family Theater. Rosalind Carter was the first lady to keep her office in the East Wing. And so this has been an ever-evolving wing of the White House that it was never even conceptualized by the original builders of the White House. So this isn't some destruction of the original White House in any way, shape, or form. And it's not using taxpayer dollars, and it is something that's needed. Because currently, the greatest, most powerful and wealthiest nation in the world, when events get held there with foreign dignitaries and others, we set up tents. And this will correct that problem. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Oh, man, this has got to sting. California Governor Gavin Newsom has suffered a setback in early polling for the 2028 Democratic presidential race, with new surveys showing his support slipping. According to this poll of Democrat and independent voters, he has fallen behind significantly Kamala Harris. Oh, man, that's got to sting. It is like Dumb and Dumber, these two. It obviously is very early on. But clearly, well, he's the one that's doing the most overt jockeying at this point. Kamala Harris is out there on her book tour claiming that she is the most viable, or what was it? Was it viable? What was it? The most prepared?
I think it was most prepared.
Qualified. Was it qualified?
I'm going to have to look it up now.
Yeah, presidential candidate ever in the history of the country. And so she's out there, she's doing her thing, but it's very clear and over. He is in presidential campaign mode. And he has changed tactics a number of times, and this is what happens when you are all surface.
Qualified.
The most qualified. Yes. The most qualified person. I actually do remember Adam Schiff saying something along those lines, that she went during the election, that she was the most qualified person to ever run for president. And I know there were a lot of people trying to figure out where she got that from, and I don't know if that's where, but I do remember it was either Adam Schiff or Fang Fang's boyfriend. What was his name? Eric Swalwell. It was one of those two that made that declaration. But I mean, they're equally intelligent, so either one of them, it's quite a compliment for Kamala Harris. But Gavin Newsom, you may recall, really, he tried to create this persona of being the non-political guy. He came out with this podcast, and the promo for the podcast was going to be about how, people are tired of regular politicians, and they're tired of all the mudslinging and, the tweets and the videos and everything. And so I'm just going to be getting real, and I'm going to sit down with people that are different than me. And, he did a couple of those, and because he was somewhat accommodating, Charlie Kirk was one of those individuals, somewhat accommodating to those individuals, the left turned on him. So he realized very quickly that in order to get the nomination, you have to be insane. You cannot be this is the real problem the Democrats have created for themselves. You have to be completely opposite of yourself in the primary versus the general. The problem is you can't get to the general without being insane any longer. Once upon a time, you could. Once upon a time, and this would have been the Clinton era in particular, up to, Democrats would look at the candidate and say, okay, I like this person, but they had enough brain power to say to themselves, how will they fare in the general election? Will moderate individuals be able to find reasons to vote for this person? Because it was called electability, general election electability. That's gone. The average Democrat out there today is insane, and they demand their candidates also be insane. They demand their candidates be angry. They demand that their candidates have the sky is falling approach, that everything is the end of everything. We're all going to die unless you support me. The contradiction that those people have set for themselves, however, is that those individuals generally cannot win, especially across this nation, general elections with normal people voting. It is somewhat amusing to watch the trap they have set for themselves because they're so frustrated and angry. Why can't we get anything done? They don't realize it's because of the people they choose to be in leadership. That's why. Gavin Newsom's 30 seconds of trying to be a general election presidential candidate by having this podcast in which you reach across the aisle. It did not last long because he, became, and I think the podcast may still be going on, but he certainly isn't doing the sit down with people across the aisle stuff any longer because the left sent him a message, you cannot do that. So he pivoted. And his new persona is to just copy Donald Trump, which, of course, is ironic because they claim that Donald Trump is this awful, horrible person. Particularly, what's the latest right now? Because of the video, AI video of him in the fighter jet dropping feces on all of these left-wing lunatics at the No Kings parade, and just how unpresidential that is. So the plan has been Gavin Newsom to do the same thing. Do what the Democrats claim is unpresidential. And so he has once again shifted his entire personality trait, and it's to send out all and to try to make names, try to create these clever little names that are they're just not authentic because everything is about trying to copy what Donald Trump does. Well, and it's clearly not working. So the latest Noble Predictive Insight poll conducted between October 2nd through the 6th shows that among Democrats and independents, Newsom is now trailing Kamala Harris for the 28 nomination. I can't imagine. Can you imagine losing to Kamala Harris? According to the poll, Harris is leading the Democratic field with support from 33% of Democrats and 27% of independents. Governor Newsom, 13% amongst Democrats, a 20-point spread. Amongst independent voters, 3%, a 24 points for Kamala Harris has support amongst 27% of independent voters. This is for the nomination. Gavin Newsom is 3. 17% of respondents say that they are undecided about their choice in a potential Democratic primary. Ocasio-Cortez ranked 3rd with 8% of support amongst both Democrats and independents, followed closely by former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg at 7%. Notice who isn't ranking there. What some would consider to be, relatively speaking, the reasonable Democrat in the room, and that is Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. But see, the problem is, once again, he's a Jew. And Democrats are not going to go that route. They have made that very, 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 very clear. I don't know what you do if you're Gavin Newsom at this point. Now, it's like I said, it's extremely early. We're talking about 3.5 years from now, the election. Well, almost 3 years now. Yeah, it is about 3 years now. So he has plenty of time to pivot. The challenge he is going to have, I suspect, is where else do you pivot? You have gone from the general election candidate, a reasonable middle-of-the-road person willing to sit down and talk with the political opposition, to the exact opposite. And that is just that, that is harming him, clearly, at least according to this poll. And with Kamala Harris, it would be one thing if you're talking about some accomplished individual. That this is the one, she just got shellacked. If it were really, really, really close, like one state was the difference, and Trump only won that state by 1,200 votes, and, you can maybe see, like, well, boy, if we had just gotten out 1,200 more voters, that's all, we could have done that, and so forth, and funneled money instead of lining the pockets of billionaire celebrities like Beyonce and Oprah Winfrey. If we had instead used it to actually get out the vote, then she could have won. But that's not what occurred. She lost, like 90% of counties in this country? And Gavin Newsom, by by 20 percentage points, is losing amongst Democrats? And, one could say, okay, well, so maybe the appeal is more moderate. The problem is, amongst independent voters, Kamala Harris is at 27%. He's at 3%. I don't know what he can do at this point. It's going to be fun to watch. And every change he makes to his personality and his approach is going to it's going to really run counter to the attractive character trait of authenticity. People like authentic. It's one of the reasons they like Trump. Well, every time you, quote, recreate yourself and reintroduce yourself, you lose. Hillary Clinton went through that. I mean, it's like every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. Oh, she's going to relaunch herself. She's going to, it's like, and then they would publicly announce it even. All right, we're going to come up with a new fake Hillary. This poll's fun. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight, clear with a low around 44. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Friday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers with a high near 58.
Pyramid Roofing Company text line 417-447-KSGF. Gavin Newsom's going to have to start carrying around hot sauce. Yeah, in his purse. That's reference to Hillary Clinton and just her cringeworthy pathetic attempt to relate in the way she thought she could to black people. That was her level of actual knowledge about black people. And that was on the Charlemagne's show when she was running against Trump, and they just asked the random question. All of it's so fake. They just asked the random question. Oh, so we're just curious. What's something you always keep in your purse? Well, that's a perfectly normal question. I mean, that's what every presidential candidate, or every woman at least, running for the or any office, that's a common question. Isn't that sort of sexist, incidentally? But her answer was, "Oh, I always keep hot sauce in there. Always keep hot sauce with me." Because black people like it's like she just Googled, what is something black people like? Oh, hot sauce. Okay, I'm gonna put that on there. Oh boy. I want to play audio from an interview done with the wife of legendary action star Sylvester Stallone, Jennifer Flavin. And I'm sure she is currently under attack by lunatics on the left because of a discussion she was having while on the show, the Katie Miller podcast. And she was asked the question about, and you'll hear the question here, why is it you think that transgender kids, there's such a high number of them in Hollywood amongst celebrities. And by the way, there is truth to this. I mean, you've got some of these celebrities. I think Cynthia Nixon has 3 kids and they're all trans. I mean, it's just like, okay, come on. And so this was the Q&A on that.
Why do you think it is that so many kids in Hollywood now and kids of, celebrity parents are transgender? Is there something in the water in Hollywood, or?
I just think Hollywood is it's all about expression. So, however you want to express yourself. So if you feel like a cat today, you're a cat. And it's so loosey-goosey. I don't think that we're really understanding that these kids are not our accessories. They're little human beings that need structure. And structure is really important for them because it helps their brain organize everything. And I think growing up in a Hollywood home, there's really no structure because you got this thing going and you got private planes and you got all these giant homes with chefs and secretaries and assistants and, housekeepers, nannies, and there's just too much of everything. It gets really confusing for a little person. And it's okay what you decide to be as an adult, but raise them just with good common sense. I mean, my daughters were all tomboys. They prefer to wear pants than dresses, and they love sports. But I never said, oh, you're a boy now. I just said, you love to play sports. You love to hang out with boys. That's awesome.
Now, just so everyone understands, and I know many of you do, right now, in all likelihood, you hear that and you're like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially the latter part of that. Here she had 3 girls and they were all tomboys, but it never even crossed her mind that means that you are an actual boy. And when they wanted to do things like play with boys or play in, carry on in activities that traditionally are boy activities, she's like, okay, well, let's just do that. I mean, it wasn't, well, that means you have to have a sex change operation in order to do it, which is the absurdity of the left. Now, but to you, that's like, well, duh. You have to understand, to the left, that is extremism. To people on the left, that is tantamount to driving transgender people to their grave. That you might as well set up concentration camps for these people and have them exterminated. That is how they think. And they've been brainwashed to believe this. There was an article after Trump's election about the massive spike of people purchasing firearms in the LGBT community because they believed what they were hearing from in the echo chamber, that Trump was going to start rounding up the LGBT community and that Trump supporters were going to go around like bashing on gay people Just absurd things. But this is what the left trains them to believe. This is what the left convinces them to believe, because they must make their followers scared to death. It is a toxic relationship built on fear. No one can love you but me. You would be nothing without me. Without me protecting you, other people are going to harm you. The relationship between the leaders of the left, the culture of the Democrat Party, and the followers is the most toxic relationship. It's one that if you transfer it to the relationship between two people, a couple, and one treated the other like the Democrat Party treats the voters, everyone that was a friend of the recipient of that treatment would say, get out of this. This is a horribly toxic relationship, and the person you're with is a horrible person. Out to Jennifer Flavin's point, however you pronounce it, Sylvester Stallone's wife here, and that, making the comment that these aren't accessories. And that's oftentimes how Hollywood treats their children. And that is so true. There was a period of time in which the accessory for the Hollywood elite were black kids. That they would go to Africa and purchase children. Madonna was one of them. There's a list of that sort of became the in vogue thing to do. And they would carry them around like a Louis Vuitton purse. And it expanded beyond Africa. I think sometimes they would get Asian children, but they had to be identifiable visually as a foreign child. Like they couldn't go to some French or Russian orphanage and purchase a kid that way, because some people might not know how special they are, that they have a foreign child that they purchased. So it had to be one that was identifiable, which is why they were all either black or Asian. Sometimes it may be Hispanic looking. And they would have nannies that would care for them unless they were going to walk down the street to the grocery store or go somewhere. Then they would call the paparazzi and take the child with them so that they could be photographed with their accessory. And this transgender situation with their kids fulfills that same emptiness that they were looking to fulfill by buying up kids from foreign countries. It's attention. Look at me. Look how special I am. These are individuals that are in a culture and an industry in which you've got to constantly be ahead of the relevancy curve. You have to be on top of the next big thing. And when it comes to children, there's nothing currently that you can do to make you more, quote, fashionable than to have a trans child. And so it's not a coincidence when you have a culture in which people's revenue is directly tied to whether or not they are, quote, relevant to the population at large, that they have a disproportionately high number of trans kids. I suppose, incidentally, have you ever seen any of the Sylvester daughters? Sylvester Stallone daughters?
No.
It's best for humanity that they certainly were left as women. Let me say that. So thank goodness for humanity that they weren't left-wing wackos that decided because all of their girls were tomboys that they were going to get them sex change operations. You know, that's another contradiction of all this stuff where people on the left say, you know, don't stereotype genders based off of behaviors. But then whenever you have a particular gender exhibit behaviors that are counter to the stereotypes of their gender, they're then told you need a sex change operation because you're clearly in the wrong body. All of that contradictory messaging comes from the left because the goal's the same. Create an accessory. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com, your home loan needs. What about reverse mortgages? Do you even know what that is? It seemed for a hot minute. I don't know, maybe those late night commercials still exist or midday commercials. I don't even know when they're on anymore. I just remember it seemed like for a while I was seeing them all the time. Tom Selleck, I think, did some of them. And it can sound kind of scary, like, oh, you have a house? Why don't you let us go ahead and take that? We'll give you a little money to spend on the side. And then you're like, well, then what happens when do I get kicked out of my house? It can sound scary and almost like a bait and switch scam, but it's a legitimate thing, and it is something the characters and their team can talk with you about. It may not be for you. But oftentimes people find it's extremely beneficial, and you also don't have to have your home completely paid off. And as I think it was Anthony Carricker explained once, it's not the sort of scenario where all of a sudden one day you're kicked out of your house. Sorry, it's over. We own it now. But that's something they can talk with you with and go over the upsides and downsides and how it may fit into what you're looking to do. So maybe for you, may not, but hey. It is something that is certainly one of the many different offerings they have, along with, of course, home loans and refinancing. I want a great homeloan.com because you do.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 44. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Friday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers with a high near 58.
You're pretty excited about the Steve-O interview coming up next hour.
I'm very excited about it.
Steve-O of Jackass fame. He's got a crash and burn tour that is coming up, and on December 11th, he will be performing at the Galois, and so we are slated to talk with him around 8:30 this morning. And if you have any questions you want me to ask him, don't know that I'll necessarily get to them all, as I have a number myself. You can send those into the Pyramid Roofing Company text line 417-447-KSGF. Did you have any questions? I didn't ask you.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But have you ever heard him talk about his sobriety?
Yes.
And I love his interviews.
Yes.
He's a very genuine person.
I enjoy just listening to people who talk about their sobriety in which you are familiar with their lives.
Yeah.
So that falls in one category, either people that you know personally or someone whose life is out there for public consumption, Steve-O being one of those individuals. And just the changes that that occur, and I always find it, I don't know, I find it neat to watch because it shows how drastically a person's life can change because of that alteration to one's lifestyle. It's not always an easy alteration, but it's certainly, you don't tend to find people who are really heavily into a particular substance and then decide to get completely off it who don't have some sort of meaningful life change. And again, if you're talking about just an average person who, even you may know people that have substance abuse issues, but you don't really know it. They hide it really well, but their family does, people who really know them to certainly see those differences. And I don't know. I find it to be an interesting thing. And I also think an inspiring thing for people in particular who just, don't know whether it's worth it or don't think that they can overcome it. And I think he's so far been a great example of somebody whose lifestyle certainly seems as if it would have made it very difficult to become sober, but managed to do it. And I don't know, do you know? Was he like really in it deep, or was he just sort of like,
I
oh,
think
good
he
time,
was.
Charlie? Yeah.
I think he was. And
Because that's another thing. You have people who go sober and they weren't necessarily stumbling drunk on the verge of death every day, where they were drinking a bottle of vodka, every day or something. But they still were, drinking a little too much to where it affected the way they felt and so forth. And I just wasn't sure which he was. But anyway, we should be talking with him around 8:30 this morning. That's Steve-O. And he is on a very tight interview schedule. This is what I've been told.
Okay.
So I have to keep it. Got him 8:30. Jon Stewart schools Bernie Sanders on economics. This is a PG Media story. Jon Stewart had Bernie Sanders on The Daily Show. And to me, this isn't so much about Jon Stewart schooling Bernie Sanders, but how easily, not distracted, but corrected people on the left can be by the likes of Bernie Sanders. And by corrected, I mean back into compliance. And it has to do with, the liberal approach of buying people's votes and just spend money, spend money, spend money, spend money, and that magically makes everything better. That is the answer to everything. It's pretty humorous because people on the left, they act as if people having money and earning money on their own, the more of it you have, the worse you are. Yet their answer for everything virtuous is money. Everything. Oh, education needs fixed, money. Drugs need money. That's always the answer, and there's never enough of it. You always have to have more of it. Now, unless it's you who has it, then it's a bad thing. As long as they have it, it's good. Bernie Sanders, who once upon a time complained about millionaires until he became one, so he suddenly had to start complaining about billionaires, was on with Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart noting the problems caused by some of these liberal policies.
Again, this gets to the Democratic solutions have never been to directly provide. It's always been a subsidy
Absolutely
to a middleman. Right. But what happens is when the government promises endless funds to insurance companies or private universities without any cost controls, and Trump seems to understand this, prices rise far beyond the rate of inflation. And we've seen it in tuition, and we've seen it in pharmaceutical, and we've seen it in healthcare. So my question is, will Democrats recognize the poison pill that they've often placed into well-intentioned policy?
Right. What they end up doing is coming up with very complicated proposals. You make $48,964.
Yes!
You will get this thing. You make $1 more, you finish the blah, 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 blah. Look, we have got to make it simple. In the wealthiest country in the history of the world, should healthcare be a human right? Yes, it should be. Should we have the best quality education in the world from childcare to graduate school? Yes, we should. Right, but
These are.
All right, how do you plan?
Let's get there.
All right, then the question is, all right, these are.
I'm writing it
All right,
down, Sanders.
The Republicans, well, you're getting violent here, you know.
I get excited when you're around.
And yeah, he would go on, of course, to talk about billionaires, and we are billionaires. Now, so this is such a fascinating thing to watch because it's almost like the Jedi mind trick. Jon Stewart speaking straight up logic, grounded in reality. Everything he said, factually accurate. The more government spends in any particular area or requires you to spend health, insurance, the more expensive it gets. That's just fact. Whether that is with health care through Obamacare, pharmaceuticals, in all of these different areas, it becomes more expensive for the citizen. So that is the framework to, he's saying this to Bernie Sanders and saying, are Democrats going to be willing to acknowledge this? What is Bernie Sanders' answer? Well, first, they're always coming up with complicated answers, to which Jon Stewart agrees. And this is accurate. Of course, the problem is it's the Democrats who lead that charge. Can anything be more complicated than Obamacare? Democrats love complication. They love rules and regulations. They love systems that are put into place by so-called experts. The more confusing, the better. But then the Jedi mind trick, and unfortunately people on the left, even those like Jon Stewart, who seemingly displays the ability to recognize reality and to comprehend what that reality is enough to where he can present it to Bernie Sanders, asking him, will your party begin to recognize this reality? The Jedi mind trick comes in whenever people like Bernie Sanders start saying things like, well, I think we could all agree that healthcare is a human right. And everybody applauds. And Jon Stewart's like, yes! And a great education, that's a human right. And oh, yes, and billionaires are bad, and they just have too much money. Okay, the Jedi mind trick has taken somebody here, Jon Stewart, that is understanding the truth and the reality of things, presenting it to, and then just with the wave of a hand in 30 seconds, he's distracted and excited and fully acknowledging, I'm always so excited when you're on. He's not giving you an answer. He's just pulling out these pretty little things and making these statements that while they aren't accurate, are red meat for people on the left who love the idea of just labeling things as human rights. And it doesn't address the issue. And the thing is, if it, let's say, and I mean, I know many of you understand the concept of what a human right is versus what one isn't, and why it is that, you have the human right to seek out and to take care of yourself and to, find someone who can care for you medically if you want to. You have the right to do that, but it's not a human right in the sense that because you are a human being, that means it must be provided to you at no cost, because there is a cost. That's a cost of somebody else being forced to do it. And then you're violating someone else's human. A human right is not something that requires somebody else to do something. But Jon Stewart clearly is agreeing with that premise. But what you have here is Bernie Sanders not then, saying, well, here's the solution, or yes, the Democrats do need to admit we are making it worse. That our approach of saying we just need more government involvement and we need to spend more money is making it more expensive, and that in turn makes it less attainable by average Americans, disproportionately hitting the poor, disproportionately hitting the lower class. The people who it doesn't really have an impact on are the billionaires that they claim that they hate so much. This is the way that the left is, and they're allowed to do this, and Jon Stewart's an example of this. He comes off so smart, and, oh, look at me, I'm willing to ask the hard questions, but it takes 30 seconds for him to, Bernie Sanders, this elderly, rich white guy, to just start making these motivational poster statements, to have Jon Stewart celebrating him as one of the most innovative and exciting people to listen to ever. Bernie Sanders is literally part of the problem. Bernie Sanders, to use specific examples of what Jon Stewart's talking about, and he touched on it, noting medicine and all things medical health care in this country, Obamacare. Bernie Sanders, a huge Obamacare guy. He, along with so many other Democrats, created the healthcare crisis we're in. And Jon Stewart, without directly noting that, because he is a lefty, and there's this weird inability for people on the left, when even they recognize their policies cause the damage, they still will support the people who push the damage because they, quote, they're the good guys. And to have someone who was one of the main pushers of the destruction of our healthcare system, and then asking him questions about the destruction of our healthcare system and when is it Democrats are going to acknowledge that their solutions are part of the problem here, and you're asking the guy who's part of the problem, and then that guy just starts saying these things like healthcare is a human right, and then boom, just like that, the Jedi mind trick for the stupid. Jon Stewart's acting like he's just the great soothsayer of our day, and that this is the sword. This is what we need. People like Bernie Sanders, see? Bernie Sanders is the people that we have. And it's the Bernie Sanders who have gotten us where we are. Anyhow, I thought it was sort of interesting that the attention and this clip is circulating because Jon Stewart is asking straight up legitimate questions grounded in reality, but what's not getting the attention is the fact that he was so easily distracted by pretty things. The House Judiciary Committee has referred former CIA Director John Brennan to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution, largely over allegations that he, quote, knowingly made false statements to Congress about his role in the Russia collusion hoax. Much needed. In the letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi, Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan argued that, quote, Brennan made numerous willfully and intentionally false statements of material fact contradicted by the record established by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the CIA. He noted making false statements before Congress is a crime that undermines the integrity of the committee's constitutional duty to conduct oversight. The referral highlights numerous instances in which Brennan allegedly issued untrue remarks when testifying before the Judiciary Committee in May of 23. Among them, comments the former CIA director made when discussing his agency's role in helping craft the 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment, known as the ICA, that advanced the false narrative that Russia, quote, developed a clear preference for Donald Trump and aspired to help him win the 2016 election, which we have learned even they knew wasn't true. As noted by Jordan, quote, this conclusion we know to be false, or now know to be false, was based in part of the Steele dossier, a series of reports containing salacious and unproven allegations about Trump that was bought and paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign's law firm. The dossier was ultimately shopped to the FBI in early July of 2016 and later used by the agency to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign official Carter Page. In the referral to the Department of Justice, Jordan pointed to testimony Brennan gave before the House Judiciary Committee about the CIA's role in the decision to include that Hillary Clinton paid dossier in the report. When asked by then Representative Matt Gaetz about whether he was involved in analyzing the dossier, Brennan said, quote, no, I was not involved in analyzing the dossier at all. I said the first time I actually saw it, it was after the election, and the CIA was not involved at all with the dossier. According to the report, however, the CIA was not only involved in the decision to include the dossier in the ICA, but Brennan overrode the objections of CIA officials concerned about its inclusion in the assessment due to its lack of substantiation. As it was previously summarized, two senior CIA officers noted that the dossier should have been omitted from the report because it failed to meet basic tradecraft standards, but one senior official said that Brennan, when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, said, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true? Brennan's role in overriding senior CIA officials' objections to the dossier inclusion in the report also appeared to contradict testimony he gave to Congress. The House Judiciary Committee chair cited an exchange he had with Brennan about who had learned about the dossier and how he learned about the dossier in December of 2016. He claimed the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the dossier in the assessment. As the newly declassified documents demonstrate, however, Brennan eagerly wanted to include information from the paid-for dossier in the final report, a fact Brennan himself documented in writing. Quote, Jordan wrote, this directly contradicts Brennan's testimony that the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the report. The committee's referral for investigation also included an instance of Brennan allegedly providing false statements to Congress in 2017. When Jordan noted, which he noted were made beyond the 5-year statute of limitation, but indicates a pattern of Brennan's willingness to lie to Congress about the Steele dossier during a back and forth with then Rep. Trey Gowdy. Brennan claimed that the dossier was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done. So it's clear contradictions between his under oath testimony versus what it is that we have subsequently learned is the actual truth. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. All right, Steve-O from Jackass, 8:30 in the next hour, plus much more as well for Hour 3. News in 60 seconds. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoors, that living space, we purchase homes, and homes, they always come on land, and we don't think about the cost of that land. You look at square footage, and this is something we talked about, actually, Emily Johnson, where people want to know what's the average cost per square foot of a home. But what about that plot of land? I mean, that you're paying for that, yet it so oftentimes does not get used. It would almost be like having a home, and then you have this sort of huge room built, but it's just sort of the framework of it, and it's not really usable for anything, but it's there, it exists. You just haven't utilized it. And that would be silly, right? People are like, what are you going to do with this room? And like, oh, nothing. We're just going to leave it like that. That would seem odd. But that's what we do when it comes to our outdoor living space so often. So many of us, we don't recognize what we have. And that's how my family existed for the longest time. And then we thought, you know what, we have this. In fact, when we first bought the house, we would sit outside a lot, but we didn't have any infrastructure outside there. And so it just quit happening. And we realized we missed that. So that's when we decided to reach out, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, and have an outdoor living space created in an area of our yard that already existed. We just weren't utilizing it. So whether it's small, large, it is just for you to sit out and have coffee in the morning, or to entertain with water features and built-in sound and lighting. They can do it all for you. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. HunterHardscapes.com is the site. You can find them at KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. I thought I'd update you on just some of the latest developments regarding the party of violence that is the Democrat Party. And there's been just some relatively new information regarding one of the No Kings protesters, and apparently another one in Chicago, that are both members of the Chicago education system. And one of the individuals was a woman, and she was filmed making the gunshot to the neck, Charlie Kirk assassination, obviously, making that motion, mocking the death and or celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And this is, I believe, a kindergarten teacher. Apparently, there is another individual as well that is part of the Chicago education system that is feeding into this violence. So videos on social media highlighted the behavior of a number of these people. Videos showing the alleged elementary school teacher mocking the assassination of Charlie Kirk. A Chicago college administrator could be facing criminal charges for inciting violence, calling for the shooting of ICE agents. That's just freedom of speech. Department of Homeland Security officials posted a video of a man they describe as a violent rioter who called for people to take up arms and kill ICE agents. By the way, this is not unlike what former CNN host Don Lemon said last week on one of his podcasts, or on a podcast, that this is what the Second Amendment is for, and he told brown and black people to arm themselves and just wait for those ICE agents to come around. Fox News legal analyst Jonathan Turley identified the man as Wilbur White College adult education manager Moises Bernal. Turley quotes Bernal as writing, quote, ICE agents got to get shot and wiped out. You got to grab a gun. We got to turn around the gun on this fascist system. This is what the Democrats have created in this country. This is the normalization of violence. Howard University professor, a left-wing one at that, shocking, has called for, quote, white allies on the left to mirror the pre-Civil War era vigilante, mass murderer John Brown. Stacy Patton, a professor of journalism at the Washington, D.C. private school, in a recent blog post titled John Brown Didn't Ask Enslaved People How to Be a Good White Ally, she discouraged white liberals from asking how to be a better ally to minorities and encouraged them instead to emulate Brown. Brown orchestrated the Potawatomi massacre. He and fellow abolitionists dragged 5 Kansas settlers, at least 3 of whom were pro-slavery sympathizers, out of their homes and executed them. In October 1859, he led a 21-man raid on a federal armory in Harper's Ferry, part of Virginia at the time, goal to start a slave uprising. Few slaves, of course, joined the fight. And there was slaughtering on both sides. Patton wrote, quote, "So when white allies ask, what can I do? Here's the answer, be like John Brown. Murder the opposition." This is what John Brown did. She went on to say, ask yourself, what am I willing to burn so somebody else can breathe? Brown didn't need a syllabus, a think piece, or a guidance or an allyship. He didn't need a firm affirmation from black folks that he was one of the good ones. He saw the horrors for what it was and decided that ending this racist blanking mattered more than being understood. And so she, again, this is a professor of journalism encouraging white people to murder political opposition. North Carolina man says he was shot at by an angry motorist who tore down a Trump banner in his mother's front yard, an incident he believes reflects the nation's growing political hostility. It's a reflection of the Democrat Party of violence. Mark Thomas, owner of a river rafting business, said he was relaxing at home September 6th when the shooting occurred, telling Fox News Digital he checked his security camera after seeing a man wearing an Antifa-style mask step out of a Jeep to look at a Trump banner attached to a bus parked near his 87-year-old mother's home. The man, identified by police as Benjamin Michael Campbell, 38, was allegedly speeding before abruptly stopping and removing the banner. Thomas said, being a Second Amendment believer, I reached over, grabbed my rifle, took off out the front porch. He fired 2 warning shots in the air, which you may recall is the way that Joe Biden recommended people handle these situations. Fired 2 warning shots in the air before Campbell allegedly got back into his vehicle, opened fire through the sunroof towards him. Campbell then fled, only to return moments later and fire several more shots, striking a refrigerator inside his elderly mother's home. He fled before police arrived. He was arrested September 30th, extradited to North Carolina, where he faces charges. This morning, a suspect arrested, or the story this morning, was arrested last night after ramming a car into a barricade on the White House, according to Secret Service. That happening at approximately 10:37 p.m. I don't know why anyone tries that. Never seems to work. Any given day, the normalization of violence. And is there a peep from any Democrats? Every day this happens. They continue to endorse the Attorney General candidate of Virginia, who has called for the murder of police officers. Meanwhile, there's a guy who was one of the January 6th people, and he was pardoned. And all he was charged with, he didn't commit any acts of violence or anything. He was parading without a permit. So he's one of the nonviolent ones. And so because of the disproportionately high amount of time he served, he was pardoned. Well, he's got himself in trouble because he's threatened to kill Hakeem Jeffries, which, of course, is not helpful. Do you know who's leading the charge for this guy to be punished? Republicans. This is not a both sides issue. Anytime, whether it's text messages from young college students that are Republicans or some random person that says something off color or says this person ought to die, Republicans are out there very loudly, very clearly saying this is not acceptable. Meanwhile, Democrats endorse those people for office. That is the difference. Which once again demonstrates this is not a two sides issue at all.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 44. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Friday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers with a high near 58.
Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. We are in open window weather, but the nights are getting a little cooler, and before you know it, it'll be time to switch that heat on. If you haven't done it yet, now is the time to do your annual inspection and maintenance, and I recommend the fine folks over at Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. One of the best ways to keep your heating system running for years to come is to get regular professional maintenance on your unit. It can save you money in the long run, and it keeps your system up and running when you need it the most. They do have a couple of different maintenance options available, so if it is time to schedule yours, or maybe you want to get set up on a maintenance schedule, but maybe you have some questions, just reach out. They're incredibly nice, incredibly friendly, and the Foreman team, they'll get you all taken care of before that cooler fall weather really sets in. Now, you can schedule your appointment at foremanmechanical.com, or you can find all of the contact information for Russell and his team under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
We got a press release, I saw it this morning from, this was Greene County.
Yes, Greene County
Clerk's office regarding quite a few poll changes in Greene County, or polling location changes. There are a number of you that will have votes on the ballot, and they all have to do with taxes, government wanting more of your money, because there just isn't quite enough. Things are running so efficiently. And it depends on where you live. Some of you will not have a vote. Some of you will have a vote. The ballots are up at ksgf.com. Of course, Brad Pistole, host of Safe Money Radio, is always the sponsor of those. But do we also have those polling location changes up there?
So we have an election section on our website. If you go to the drop-down menu, you'll see elections, and you'll scroll down just a little bit. There's like an election podcast section there, and then right underneath that, there's election news. We don't post a lot, but basically it's the important stuff that we do post. So those polling location changes, they are up at ksgf.com.
And they're Green. It's Greene County.
Yes, Yes, and this
So,
is specifically for
right,
Greene
yeah.
County.
We just haven't received anything from other counties indicating changes.
And there's 7, by the way.
Okay, 7. So quite a few. There's a I don't know if you've followed this or even are aware of it. It may not be on your radar because it takes place in Maine. But Susan Collins, Democrats are hoping that they can unseat her. She's a Republican that, she's kind of a lefty and oftentimes betrays Republican values and voters and sides with the Democrats. But Democrats, it's never enough. And so they're trying to replace her. And out of the gate, they love to find, they're so crazy. They go on and on about toxic masculinity and about veterans, potential terrorists, and, all of the horrible things that are the traditional man. But then they will go out and try to find someone that fits that bill. And so they found a guy by the name of Graham Plattner, who's a Marine vet. And they've really, Bernie Sanders, full-throated endorsement of this guy. I mean, this is the guy that's going to do it. Well, he's a left-winger, though, of course, as always, what do? They present him as, this is a moderate, reach-across-the-aisle kind of guy. No, we know the Democrat Party does not allow those people to exist. We've seen they're trying to unseat Fetterman. So they don't recruit normal, average, moderate Democrats any longer. Those are the people they throw out of office. The idea that this is one of those individuals that Bernie Sanders and other establishment Democrats are supporting is laughable, that he's anything other than an extreme leftist. But he also has, unfortunately for him, a lot of things and postings in the past that, like so many other Democrats, are having to apologize for. One of which he's at his brother's wedding, and I guess he's drunk. So he tears off his shirt, and he's singing, I'm sure horribly, and seen in the photo, because he drunkenly ripped off his own shirt, is a tattoo that appears to resemble the Totenkampf, which is an image adopted as a symbol by Hitler's Schutzstaffel, or SS. And as you can imagine, that's something that some people like, you know what, that looks a little wrong. Now, he has, since he did this, and this has been noted, he's like, well, I was drunk when I got it, and, I did what Marines do, and we went out and got it. So it's all okay. It's all perfectly fine. He also claimed that this has never come up before until they got wind of, that opposition research was trying to use this and so forth. And his campaign advisor, former campaign advisor, has essentially said that's a lie, saying maybe he didn't know it when he got it, but he got it years ago. He should have had it covered up because he knows damn well what it means. That is from Genevieve McDonald on Facebook, and she's a former campaign manager who resigned because of old Reddit posts, which labeled police as bastards, saying white Americans are stupid and racist. And, well, there was one other statement I thought was really funny. Oh, shoot, I can't. There was something else he said that I thought was pretty funny. But he says, he did it all because he was really angry. That's why. Which some may say, if that is the sort of behavior one exhibits when they get, quote, angry, leadership may not be the best position possible for you. Bernie Sanders is still supporting the guy, though. All right, we're going to take a quick break. More coming up. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 44. For your Thursday, sunny with a high near 71. And taking a look at Friday, we'll see a 70% chance of showers with a high near 58.
Coming to the Galois Theater December 11th, Crash and Burn Tour, Steve-O, and he joins us. I got to tell you, Sarah here, producer Sarah, is very, very excited about
Steve-O!
the fact that you are joining us this morning.
Yeah, dude.
What's that?
I said, yeah, dude.
Yeah, you're calling from Tennessee, is that right?
Correct.
That is beautiful
Yeah, I
country
moved out
there.
here a couple years ago.
What made you move there? I mean, it's beautiful.
I'll tell you what made me move. I was living in Los Angeles. The insurance company let me know that the fire risk was too great for them to renew my homeowner's policy.
Boy, that was timely, yeah, to say the least. I wanted to ask you, of course, most people, and we'll get into what people can expect with as you're traveling across the country, going to be here in Springfield with this tour. Obviously, I think it's fair to say most people know you or first learned of you, Jackass, particularly, just so many growing up. But I'm curious, one, like, what was the very, very beginning of that whole thing? And then today, something like that, if it became culturally massive as Jackass did, it would be because of social media. But this was before social media had, or it was such a conduit for so much information to be put out there, entertainment put out there as it is today. So it was a much different time. And so how did it go from whatever it was to where it became as big as it did without social media being what it is today back then?
Well, man, I love it, dude. I love the questions because the history is so rich, man. For my part, it started when my dad won a video camera in a golf tournament. He stuffed it in his closet, gave it no thought, and I went and stole it from him.
How old?
I was 15.
Got it.
The year was 1990, and I stole the video camera, went about filming my first video. It was skateboarding, and I edited it all with VCRs connected to each other.
Yeah.
I decided at that point, I was like, man, this is it. I'm like, whatever it is, the video is my future. And so I went to the University of Miami to study communications. I was hopeful of becoming an advertising guy, but I couldn't make it to class, and I was in trouble with drugs and alcohol, and so I decided, you know what, I'm going to become a crazy famous stuntman with the home video camera. This is 1993 at this point. And you're right. There was no internet. There was not even reality TV. The video camera was not a household item, let alone in everybody's pocket. And I just went for it. Everybody I told my plan to felt sorry for me. It was really there was no precedent for what I was trying to do. But I went for it. I was homeless for 3 years. Then found out about Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College. And I thought if I could graduate from there, I would, be a trained circus professional. People would take me seriously as a stuntman. And that was kind of funny. Around that time, there was a skateboarding magazine that was particularly filthy, and just crazy. They had Johnny Knoxville and Wee Man. I linked up with this magazine right around the time when their videos were becoming crazy popular. And it was the people in charge of that, they thought, if we take out all the skateboarding, just the crazy stuff, it might be a good TV show. and they got Spike Jones involved, and the rest was kind of history. But yes, what brought it all together was skateboarding. That's what brought me to the video camera. The skateboarding magazine, Big Brother, brought all these personalities together, and MTV picked it up in year 2000. So we just celebrated our 25th anniversary, which is insane.
We're talking with Steve-O. The Crash and Burn Tour are going to be making a stop December 11th, the Gloys Theater in Springfield. I guess we can just speculate, but what were you like in high school?
Oh, man. My childhood was uncomfortable, I'll say. I was an attention whore. That was kind of my thing. In high school, the first 2 years was big in skateboarding. The last 2 years was big in drugs and alcohol. And the drugs and alcohol coming into the picture marked a real nosedive for my my academic performance. Had I not gotten into the University of Miami on early acceptance, I think I wouldn't have.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the show. What can people expect? What's the show like?
The show, it's like an extra naughty Jackass movie meets a stand-up comedy show. This is the fourth show of its kind. I started out doing stand-up way back in 2010. My first comedy special was just me and the microphone and the things that happened on stage. My second comedy special, I brought in a multimedia component in post-production. I edited in footage to illustrate the stories. And then that worked well enough that I decided I wanted to make subsequent tours multimedia with the footage coming on the road. So that's when it started becoming an exercise in filming like all new and just crazier stunts. And I'm able to do that because I don't have I don't have to get stunts cleared by any corporate entities. I don't have to follow OSHA, or any other laws. Like I don't bother with insurance or anything. So, life and limb is on the line, and what happens. And it's just a lot of fun, man. So yeah, like I'm excited. This show, I set the bar super high with my last tour, which was Steve-O's Bucket List. And, in that one, I had medical professionals stealing drugs from hospitals so that they could administer general anesthesia into my veins while I was riding a bicycle. Like, I had an epidural foot race. Like, where you get the 4-inch needle in your spine. They rip out the needle and I take off running to see how far I can go. Like pretty high level stuff. Of course, what these stunts I'm describing were from my last tour, which was Steve-O's Bucket List. That whole show lives on my website, like streaming for free with no ads. You just got to click to say you're over 18. Yeah. Otherwise, because like it's gnarly. But yeah, like this one that I went to war for this show, man. I'm super happy with it.
Yeah, you hear oftentimes people that are, a lot of times those people that get real high up on skyscrapers, and they do these crazy things that are, for a lot of people, it's anxious just to watch it. And you hear that, there's just a thing with their brain where they don't have the fear level of pain or of heights that a lot of other people do. You clearly, for years now, have been doing these different stunts that the average person thinks, I could never even bring myself to do that because of the fear of the pain and the unknown. Do you think there's part of you that your brain is wired in a way? Do you not worry about it? Do you not fear the pain, the accidents, the unforeseen circumstances, or have you just become numb to it, do you think?
I really
Oh, thanks.
I genuinely do. You know, like there's so many people that say, what stunt hurt the most, whatever, but like, you know, you're getting a little bit more in you know, to the root of it. I love that. The answer to your question, I genuinely don't consider myself an adrenaline junkie. I really don't. I'm not in any way impervious to pain. I don't have a particularly high pain threshold, you know, and with respect to being numb, yeah, there's nothing about being numb. It's just simply that I'm an attention whore, like through and through, like to my core. And what it looks like for me is that it's simply a case of my desire for attention outweighing my desire for comfort and safety.
Have you ever wondered why you're that way?
I grew up in 5 different countries, speaking 3 different languages. My dad was a corporate executive, and you know, I was born in England. Spoke my first words in Brazil. Moved to Venezuela when I was 2. My mom, like, and everybody on her side of the family, intense alcoholic. My dad constantly traveling on business. So I imagine you don't have to be Sigmund Freud to you know, kind of glean that I was looking for maybe a little bit more attention from my parents. Is that it? You know, I'm not sure.
Right.
I think another big piece of it is that, you know, it occurred to me at like on a philosophical level at an early age that we've only got one instinct as human beings, which is to survive. Yet we've only got one guarantee, which is that we won't survive. So it's like, what are we doing here, man? We're you know, on this barreling course towards the one thing we fear the most. And from that, you know, thought process, I decide that our human experience, it must be an exercise in wrapping our head around our mortality. And people have different ways of doing that. They turn to religion because the religion says everything's going to be okay. And they have children because, you know, part of them will live on, and that's their legacy. And, you know, for me, I turned to the video camera. I thought, you know, I'm going to fail at life. I'm going to just die young and having failed, but I want to leave my message in a bottle. And so, you know, from my early years, I was just trying to gather together enough video footage that I thought might outlive me. And that was my way of cheating death. So the video camera is a big deal in that regard, and that's never changed.
Well, and for people listening right now, also, they can check out your podcast, Wild Ride, with conversations with celebrities. And then I know you've got autographed books, a number of those, stevo.com, and Hot Sauce as well, a collection. So just you're very diversified.
You know what? I've got a condiment disorder. I really I cannot eat food without absurd quantities of condiments, and it really just felt like kind of it was somebody I worked with. They're like, man, like, you're so crazy about hot sauce, you got to start your own. And I ended up coming up with the idea to start Stevo's Hot Sauce for Your Butthole.
Oh, nice. Well, listen, really, one, appreciate your time. I know how busy you clearly are, and you've got so many stops on the tour. Appreciate the fact that December 11th you'll be at the Galois Theater, and hope you enjoy your time here in Springfield. Steve-O, it is the Crash and Burn Tour. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Hey, man, thank you. I also want to say that Missouri's own Kristen Lacey who's
Yes.
Missouri Zone. I love him so much. He reached out to me when he saw my tour schedule. He said, "Brother, let me get on the Springfield, Missouri show." And I always love doing shows with Preston, so he's going to be my opener. And he's been
Well,
putting in the work.
Well, and before I let you go, I'll have to let you know we may have to make it then, because prior to his move out there to L.A., my wife was roommates with him for a while. She went to Joplin High School. So I'll have to let her know that. Steve-O, thank you, sir. Appreciate it greatly.
Yeah.
All right, you bet, my friend. Take care. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. I could have talked to him a lot longer.
Yes.
I'm always interested in, you see these people, Steve-O, and for a lot of people, they may not think of there being much depth there, because they're like, what sort of idiot does that sort of stuff? But, you just find out, like, what makes you do this sort of stuff, and why this and that. And I just always find it interesting to really, I know it sounds so, I don't know, like you're trying to sound self-important or something. Like, I really try to dig deep, but I don't know. I'm always interested in that sort of stuff. And the crazier the person is, sometimes the more interesting I find how they got there and what makes them that way and why they think they got that way. That's what I always think is interesting too, because, Kenny Rogers once said that he said that I think he said Dolly Parton told him once, there's three versions of you. There's who people think you are, who you think you are, and then who you really are. And it's always interesting to me when people that, they take certain paths, why they think they got there. And anyhow, it should be a good show to say the least. I would suggest probably not what would traditionally be considered family friendly.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking, well, this would be a good one to take the kids to, you may not want to do that.
Whenever you go to his website, the first thing that pops up is him naked on a couch. So
yeah,
to get the tour date.
Yes,
So.
indeed. And someone had texted in Nick's current situation, and it was it's a little GIF of, I think it's Airplane One. It's either one or two, but I think it's one in which he's drenched in sweat while trying to manage the plane, and that's he knew, Steve-O knew it was live, but that was a live interview. Oh, did you ask him if he knows? It should be a definitely an entertaining show. I saw he's going to be also in Sheboygan on December 17th, the Stephanie Weil Center, which, of course, I lived up there for a brief period of time and enjoyed it.
Still have listeners up there, so
well, that is true.
There you go.
Yes, so for those of you listening in Wisconsin, because let's see, he's going to be in Wausau as well. So if you are in those areas, then and you want to see him,
December 17th and 18th.
There you go. Yep, back to back. He's really all over the place. So on the 6th, he's in Hot Springs, December. Then 7th, 8th, and 9th, Tyler, Texas. Then the 11th here, and then the 12th in Iowa, Ottumwa, Iowa, and then Omaha, Nebraska, then Rapid City, South Dakota. So he's really traveling around. Then from South Dakota to Wisconsin, man. Okay. Traveling about. Let's see which of these two. Okay, let me mention this before we go to the break. Hamas continues to execute people in Gaza to send a message that, and this is a message to the Gazan people, the Palestinians that left-wing activists claim they care so much about, that they are in charge. They have turned their terrorism against their, quote, own people. Footage, and who's really trying to make sure the world knows this? Israel, because as shocking as this may be, it's not getting quite the attention that it should. If you haven't noticed, there aren't left-wing Democrat activists on college campuses protesting to save these people. The virtuous No Kings protesters, the 83 million of them, I think is probably the last count or will be soon. Not a peep from those people. Footage shared by the Israeli Foreign Ministry from inside the Strip shows Hamas gunmen dragging a man across the street as he yells before they start savagely kicking him. One of the gunmen then aims his rifle at the already badly beaten man, shoots him in the leg and torso, all to the horror of a second dissident who breaks down crying as the gunshots continue to ring out. The terrorists proceed to beat and execute the rest of the men they rounded up as Hamas reasserts its control over the Gaza Strip, or attempts to, amid the ceasefire. The Israeli foreign minister posted on X with the video, "We call on all media outlets to give appropriate coverage to this threat to regional security. Responsible journalism should shine a light on this. Hamas, the terror state controlling Gaza, is brutalizing Palestinians as it seeks to reestablish control," the ministry added with the video it warned was difficult viewing. Along with the video of the executions, the ministry shared a clip of a group of masked men suspected to be Hamas standing in a circle and beating an injured man with sticks. The victim is seen desperately trying to cover his head and face as the masked men beat him relentlessly. When he appears to try to crawl underneath a car for shelter, one of the assailants drags him back to the center of the street to proceed with the public beating. The image is only the latest depicting Hamas' aggressive push to restore its order across the Gaza Strip by turning terrorism on its own people. Now, for those who may want to say, well, I mean, it's the Israelis that put this out. How do we know it's true? They are broadcasting this stuff on their own channels. Hamas wants the people of Gaza to know this is happening. That is the point. That is the point of terrorism, is to create such fear and terror that they will comply and do whatever you want. Shame on all of you people that wave the Free Palestine flag only to try to stick it, or so you think it's sticking it, to Donald Trump. Shame on all of you people on the college campuses, all of you left-wing activists that claim you care about the poor people of Gaza, about the poor Palestinians, for keeping your mouths shut now. Where are you? Springfield, and where's Ilhan Omar? Where are the Sob Squad members? They are sick human beings, depraved of any even hint of humanity. And their silence, as Hamas is publicly broadcasting these executions and these tortures to send a message, their silence tells us what we need to know about those people. And those are people that are elected officials in the United States of America that are sitting by and essentially demonstrating their support for what's being done by not protesting against it. Sarah Myers, everyone.
The Pyramid Roofing Company, with the recent storms that happened over the weekend and more rain in the forecast for later this week, door knockers are out and about. And many of these individuals, they don't have you or your home's best interest in mind. 9 times out of 10, they tell you that you need a whole new roof, even if that's not actually the case. And then they make you sign what is called a contingency agreement. And once you sign that, it is incredibly difficult to get out of. If you have storm damage or you think you have storm damage, reach out to Josh with the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections where they take a ton of photos and videos so you can see exactly what they see, and then they work with you through that insurance process without making you sign anything. And I always mention that because not all roofing companies do that. So if it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, schedule that appointment today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Want to play a clip of audio? I'm sure you may hear it again throughout the day, and this is that trash former White House spokesperson Jen Psaki talking about J.D. Vance. And, of course, she's got to bully his wife while she's at it.
I think the little Manchurian candidate, J.D. Vance, wants to be president more than anything else.
Yeah.
I always wonder what's going on in the mind of his wife. Like, Are you okay? Please blink 4 times.
Yes.
We'll come over here. We'll save you. And that he's willing to do anything to get there. And that your whole iteration you just outlined, I mean, he's scarier in certain ways.
He's smarter
in some ways. And he's young.
So 2 takeaways here just from that 26-second clip. 1, any Republican, establishment Republican who thought, well, and even as Trump was running for re-election, if only he weren't, if only he weren't running, the left wouldn't be able to just, demonize him, and it'll be great when he's gone because they'll back off. Did you hear what she said? J.D. Vance is worse, scarier than Donald Trump. Everything for the left in their current culture is worse than the thing before. Whomever gets the nomination, be it J.D. Vance or whomever, will be worse than Donald Trump. And you're already hearing the beginning of it. J.D. Vance, is they are assuming that he's going to get the nomination and that he will be running for president of the United States 3 years from now or 2 years from now. He's worse than Donald Trump. Secondly, they cannot help but bully these wives. There is this mean, nasty, hateful instinct, particularly that come from women on the left, that want to take the wives of these individuals and drag them into it. They did it with Melania Trump, a woman who has never said a cruel or even a hint of a mean word to anyone. And now it looks like they're going to be starting on J.D. Vance's wife as well. And while they faux this sympathy for her, they did the same thing with Melania in the beginning until they turn against them. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.